The Great Hall on Nexus Prime stretched wider than most cities. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in floating chairs that moved silently through the air. The walls showed pictures of distant stars and planets, each one home to a different kind of life. This was the Galactic Council, where the most important decisions in the universe were made. Elder Thackrus walked slowly to the center of the hall. His body was old and bent, covered in gray scales that had once been bright blue. The Vorthak were the oldest race anyone knew about. They had seen empires rise and fall, watched stars die, and remembered things that happened before most worlds, had life on them. In his hands, Thackrus carried a small box made of dark metal. Inside were data crystals older than the council itself. The other beings in the hall looked at him with mild interest. Most thought the Vorthak were finished as a people. Their planet was dying, their numbers were few, and their technology seemed ancient compared to the sleek ships and smart computers of the newer races. "I come before this council with a warning," Thackrus said. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the huge room. "The archives of my people speak of a danger that grows in the third spiral arm. A species that will change everything. We know about the galaxy." Councillor Vextar of the Zeltron Empire leaned forward in his chair. His skin was smooth and silver, his eyes large and dark. The Zeltrons were proud of their perfect society, where everything worked according to plan, and peace had lasted for 10,000 years. "Elder Thackrus," Vextar said with a voice like smooth glass, "your people have given us many gifts of knowledge over the years. But surely you speak of ancient history. The galaxy is civilized now. We have laws, trade agreements, and peace between all thinking beings." Thackrus opened the metal box. The data crystals inside glowed with soft light. "These records tell of a world called Earth. It orbits a yellow star in a region we consider barely worthy of exploration. The beings there call themselves humans. Representative." Kylith of the Andromedian Federation spoke next. Her people were known for their perfect logic and cold thinking. They solved problems with mathematics and never let emotions cloud their judgment. "What makes these humans different from any other developing species?" Kylith asked. "We have protocols for contact with new civilizations. We guide them, teach them, and help them join the galactic community when they are ready." Thackrus touched one of the crystals. Images appeared in the air above the council. They showed a blue and green world covered in clouds. The planet looked beautiful but violent, with huge storms and earthquakes that would destroy most civilizations. "They are not like us," Thackrus said. "Every species in this galaxy learned the same lesson as we grew up. We learned to fit into our world, to accept what nature gave us, and to find harmony with our environment. Humans never learned this lesson. The images changed to show strange creatures walking on two legs. They had no fur, no scales, no natural weapons. They looked weak and soft compared to the strong beings of the galaxy." "Look at them," laughed Councillor Drexmon of the Nexari Trade Federation. His people controlled most of the trade routes between stars and were always looking for new markets. "They have no claws, no armor, no venom. What could beings like that possibly do?" Thackrus continued to show images from the ancient records. Humans building cities that reached toward the sky. Humans crossing vast oceans in wooden ships. Humans turning deserts into farms and jungles into cities. "They do not adapt to their world," Thackrus said. "They make their world adapt to them. When the cold comes, they do not grow thicker fur. They make fire. When they cannot fly, they do not accept it. They build machines to carry them through the air. When death comes for them, they do not go quietly. They fight it with medicine and technology. The council chamber filled with the sound of various species laughing, clicking, and making other sounds of amusement. To them, this sounded like the behavior of children who had not yet learned wisdom. Commander Krixtal of the Corvan Empire stood up. His people were warriors, but they followed strict rules about honor and proper combat. They believed that strength came from discipline and accepting one's place in the natural order. If these humans are so dangerous, Krixtal said, why have we never encountered them? Our scouts have mapped every system worth visiting in that region. We have found nothing but primitive worlds. Thakris looked tired as he answered. Because they are still learning. But the records show what happens when they do learn. They do not follow the rules that govern all other life. Where we see impossible, they see merely difficult. Where we see the end, they see a new beginning. The images showed more scenes from Earth. Humans killing massive beasts with simple tools. Humans building on ground that shook and split. Humans sailing into storms that should have destroyed them. In every image, they were doing things that no sensible species would attempt. Elder Thakris, Vextar said with patience that was clearly running thin, these are the actions of a young species that has not yet learned wisdom. When they discover faster-than-light travel, when they meet other civilizations, they will mature. They will learn to take their place in the galactic order. Like everyone else? Thakris gathered his crystals back into the box. His old hands shook as he closed the lid. That is what you do not understand. They will not take their place in our order. They will make a new order. And we will have to take our place in theirs. The council erupted in noise. Some beings laughed. Others made angry sounds, and a few called for the old Vorthak to be removed from the chamber. How dare he suggest that some primitive species could challenge the greatest civilizations in the galaxy? As the noise died down, Thakris spoke one last time. The records say they are coming. Our long-range sensors have detected the first signs of their attempts at faster-than-light technology. In 50 years, maybe less, they will be here, and you will discover that everything you think you know about the nature of intelligent life is wrong. He walked slowly from the center of the hall, his footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. Most of the council dismissed his words as the fears of a dying race, but a few beings sat in thoughtful silence, wondering if there might be truth in the ancient warnings. As the council session ended and beings from 100 worlds returned to their ships, none of them knew that on a small blue planet in the third spiral arm, a young human named Dongmin was putting the finishing touches on humanity's first faster-than-light engine. The test flight was scheduled for next week. The galaxy continued its peaceful existence, confident in the wisdom of ages and the stability of their perfect civilization. The warning had been given, but like so many warnings throughout history, it would be ignored until it was too late to matter. In the depths of space, between the stars, ancient monitoring stations left by the Vorthak millions of years ago continued their silent watch. They recorded energy signatures, gravitational anomalies, and the first tentative reaches of human technology toward the stars. The sensors were patient, as they had been built to be. Soon, very soon, they would have something important to report. Captain Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the New Seoul, watching the stars through the large window in front of him. After 3 months of traveling faster than light, He still could not believe humans had actually done it. They had broken free from Earth and were now exploring the galaxy like the old science fiction movies had promised. The new Soul was not a beautiful ship by any measure. It looked like a metal box with engines stuck on the back. The hull was thick and ugly, built to take damage rather than avoid it. Inside, everything was designed to be fixed quickly with simple tools. Human engineers had learned to build things that worked, not things that looked nice. "Captain," called Navigator Subin from her station, "we're getting some strange readings. Ahead. Multiple ships, configurations unknown." Ji-hoon walked over to look at Subin's screen. She was young but smart, one of the best pilots Earth had produced. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes were focused on the dancing lights that showed ship positions. "How many?" Ji-hoon asked. 12 ships in formation. They're not moving toward us, but they're not running away either, just sitting there like they're waiting." Tae-ho, the weapons specialist, looked up from his console. He was a big man with scars on his hands from years of working with dangerous equipment. "Captain, those ships are using technology we've never seen. Energy readings are off the charts, but in patterns that don't match anything in our databases." Hae-jin, the chief engineer, spoke from the engine room through the communication system. Her voice crackled through the speakers. "Ji-hoon, whatever. Those ships are using for power. It's way beyond what we have. But our engines are running fine. We can fight or run, your choice." Ji-hoon made his decision quickly. That was the human way. "Open a communication channel. Let's see who our neighbors are." The main screen flickered and showed the interior of an alien ship. The being that appeared was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to shine with its own light. Its eyes were larger than human eyes, and it moved with perfect grace. When it spoke, the words came through their translation system in perfect Korean. "I am Commander Kiksdal of the Zeltron Imperial Fleet," the being said. Its voice was smooth and musical. "You are traveling in ships of unknown design through space claimed by the Galactic Council. Identify yourselves." Ji-hoon stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "I am Captain Ji-hoon of the Terran exploration ship New Soul. We come from Earth, seeking to make contact with other civilizations." Kiksdal's large eyes studied Ji-hoon with what looked like amusement. "Terran? Earth? These names are not in our databases. You appear to be a previously unknown species. This is unusual. Most species contact us long before they achieve interstellar flight." "We're explorers," Ji-hoon said simply. "We want to learn about the galaxy and find our place in it." The alien commander leaned forward slightly. "Your ship design is very primitive. Metal hull, chemical rockets for maneuvering, kinetic weapons instead of energy beams. How did you achieve faster-than-light travel with such basic technology?" Tae-ho whispered to Subin. "Did he just call our weapons primitive? Wait until he sees what kinetic weapons can actually do." Ji-hoon ignored the comment about primitive technology. "We learned by trying many different approaches until one worked. That's how humans solve problems." Kiksdal made a sound that the translation system could not convert. "How inefficient. Proper species develop technology in logical steps, building on established principles. You seem to have skipped several stages of development." "Maybe," Ji-hoon said, "but we got here." The conversation continued for several minutes. Kiksdal explained about the Galactic Council, the established trade routes, and the proper procedures for new species to follow. Ji-hoon listened politely, but did not like what he was hearing. The aliens seem to think humans should be grateful to be allowed into their galaxy. Your species will need to undergo evaluation, Kiksdal finally said. We will escort you to the nearest council station, where you will be processed and assigned an appropriate status within galactic civilization. Assigned a status? Ji-hoon asked. What does that mean? All species have their proper place. Some are naturally suited for trade, others for labor, still others for military service. A few rare species are suited for leadership and decision-making. We will determine where humans fit best. Subin looked at Ji-hoon with raised eyebrows. Taeho's hands moved closer to his weapon controls. Hai-jin's voice came through the speakers, with barely controlled anger. Captain, did that thing just suggest we're going to be assigned jobs like pets? Ji-hoon kept his face calm, but inside he was getting angry. Commander Kiksdal, humans determine their own place in the universe. We're not looking to be assigned anything by anyone. Kiksdal's expression changed to something that might have been surprise. You misunderstand your situation. You are one ship with primitive technology facing the combined might of galactic civilization. You have no choice in this matter. There's always a choice, Ji-hoon said quietly. The alien commander made that untranslatable sound again. You are either very brave or very stupid. I am not certain which. But you will come with us, willingly or not. Ji-hoon looked around his bridge. His crew was small but loyal. They had volunteered for this mission knowing they might never return to Earth. Each of them had left family and friends behind to explore the unknown. Now they faced a choice that would define humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. Subin, Ji-hoon said calmly. Plot a course back toward Earth. Maximum speed. Captain, they're powering up weapons, Taeho reported. 12 ships against one. We can't win this fight. Maybe not, Ji-hoon said. But we can make sure they remember it. The alien ships opened fire first. Beams of energy struck the new soul's hull, burning through the outer armor. But the ship kept flying. Human engineering had built the vessel to survive damage that would cripple more advanced ships. Taeho returned fire with the ship's kinetic weapons. Simple metal projectiles launched at tremendous speed. The alien ships tried to deflect them with energy shields, but kinetic weapons did not work the way energy weapons did. The solid metal punched through shields and armor, sending one alien ship spinning out of control. Impossible, came Kiksdal's voice over the communication channel. Your weapons are primitive. They should not be able to penetrate our defenses. Primitive doesn't mean ineffective, Ji-hoon replied as another alien ship took damage. The battle was short but fierce. The new soul fought like a cornered animal, taking enormous damage but dealing out more than the aliens expected. When it became clear that the human ship could not escape, Ji-hoon made a decision that shocked everyone, including his own crew. All crew to escape pods, he ordered. That's a direct order. Captain, what are you doing? Subin asked. Ji-hoon was already moving toward the ship's controls. I'm going to show them something about humans they need to understand. As his crew reluctantly moved to the escape pods, Ji-hoon set the new soul on a collision course with Kiksdal's flagship. The alien commander appeared on the screen again, his perfect composure finally cracked. What are you doing? This is madness. Civilized beings do not behave this way. Ji-hoon smiled grimly as he increased the ship's speed. Then I guess humans aren't civilized. The new soul struck the alien flagship at full speed. The explosion lit up space for thousands of kilometers. When the light faded, both ships were gone, along with Captain Ji-hoon and Commander Kiksdal. Subin found herself in command of 3 escape pods and 12 surviving crew members. Around them, the remaining alien ships floated in stunned silence. No species in galactic history had ever deliberately sacrificed themselves in combat. It went against every principle of civilized warfare. Finally, one of the alien ships contacted the escape pods. "This is Captain Vexlon. We will allow you to return to your homeworld. Take this message to your people. What happened here today must never happen again." Subin looked at the alien captain through the small screen in her escape pod. "Commander Kixdal said humans would be assigned a place in your civilization. Captain Ji-hoon just showed you what we think of that idea. When you meet humans again, remember that we choose our own path." The escape pods began their long journey. Back to Earth carrying news of first contact and the sacrifice of Captain Ji-hoon. Behind them, the alien ships also departed, carrying a very different message than they had expected to deliver. The galaxy was about to learn that humans did not follow the established rules of civilized behavior. The question was whether they would adapt to this new reality or try to force humans to conform to their expectations. Given what had just happened, it seemed clear which approach humans would prefer. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything seen in 1,000 years. Representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to discuss the report from Captain Vexlon of the Zeltran fleet. The main hall buzzed with conversation, in dozens of languages as beings tried to understand what had happened in the third spiral arm. Councillor Vextar stood at the center of the chamber, his usually perfect composure showing cracks. The loss of a Zeltran flagship was not something that happened in their orderly universe. Ships were damaged in accidents sometimes or lost to natural disasters, but destroyed in combat by primitives? That was unthinkable. The report states that this human captain deliberately crashed his ship into Commander Kixdal's vessel, Vextar said, his voice strained. Both ships were completely destroyed. Such behavior is beyond our understanding. Representative Kylith of the Andromedian Federation processed the data with her usual logical approach. The humans used kinetic weapons instead of energy-based systems. Their tactics did not follow established patterns for space combat. They appeared to value mission success over individual survival. Commander Krixtal of the Corvan Empire shook his head in disgust. "No honor in such fighting. Warriors face each other with courage, but they do not throw their lives away meaninglessly. These humans fight like mad beasts." From the Trade Confederation, Councillor Drexmon saw different possibilities. Mad or not, they destroyed our ships with inferior technology. Think of the markets we could open if we could control such fierce fighters. Primitive weapons that pierce advanced shields? There could be profit in this. High Chancellor Nixara of the Nexari spoke with the voice of pure business calculation. "The economic implications are significant. If their technology can overcome our defenses so easily, we need to understand how. More importantly, we need to ensure they don't disrupt existing trade routes." In the back of the chamber, almost forgotten, sat Zentar of the Vorthak. He was young for his species, barely 300 years old, but he carried the ancient memories of his people. His grandfather, Elder Thakris, had died shortly after delivering his warning about humans. Now Zentar watched the council make the same mistakes his grandfather had predicted. "Honored Council," Zentar said, standing slowly. His voice was not as strong as his grandfather's had been, but it carried the weight of ancient knowledge. "The archives of my people warned of this day. Humans do not follow the patterns that govern other species." Vexitar turned toward the young. Vorthak with barely hidden annoyance. Your grandfather filled this chamber with fears about these humans. Look what happened when we actually met them. One primitive ship against 12 advanced vessels. They lost, as expected. Did they? Zentar asked quietly. What did they accomplish with that loss? The question hung in the air for a moment. Finally, Kyleth answered with her precise logic. They achieved nothing. Their ship was destroyed, their captain died, and the survivors were forced to retreat. Zentar accessed one of the ancient data crystals his grandfather had left behind. Images appeared in the air showing historical records of various species' first contact with galactic civilization. Every species we have encountered follows the same pattern, Zentar explained. They are awed by our technology, grateful for our guidance, and eager to find their place in our established order. They negotiate from a position of weakness and accept whatever role we assign them. The images changed to show the surviving humans in their escape pods, specifically the conversation with Subin. Her words echoed through the chamber. When you meet humans again, remember that we choose our own path. This human spoke as an equal, Zentar continued. Not as a supplicant requesting admission to our civilization. She spoke as a representative of a power that considers itself sovereign. Commander Krickstow laughed harshly. One damaged ship and a few escape pods? What power could they possibly represent? Zentar showed more images from the ancient archives. The records speak of species that do not accept limitations. Every civilization we know learned to work within natural boundaries. We adapted our needs to fit our environment. Humans adapt their environment to fit their needs. Ancient superstition, Vexitar said dismissively. We have seen their ship. Metal hull, chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons, completely primitive by any standard. Primitive, but effective, Zentar replied. They achieved faster-than-light travel without following our established methods. They built weapons that defeat our shields using principles we considered obsolete. They fight with strategies that ignore our rules of engagement. High Chancellor Nixara leaned forward in her floating chair. What are you suggesting, young Vorthak? That we should fear these primitives? Zentar looked around the chamber at representatives of the greatest civilizations in the galaxy. They were comfortable in their superiority, confident in their advanced technology and perfect societies. None of them understood what they were facing. I suggest we should learn from them before we try to control them, Zentar said. The archives show that species like humans do not submit to external authority. They create their own authority and expect others to recognize it. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some beings laughed at the idea of learning from primitives. Others worried about the implications of humans developing more advanced technology. A few suggested immediate military action to prevent any further problems. During the chaos, Captain Vexilon's full report was distributed to all council members. The details made disturbing reading. Human ships were built differently from anything in their databases. The materials were primitive but used in ways that created unexpected advantages. Their tactics showed no regard for established rules of civilized warfare. Most concerning was the psychological profile of the humans themselves. They showed no fear of death, no respect for superior firepower, and no willingness to accept subordinate status. Captain Jihoon had chosen to die rather than submit to escort to a council processing station. When order was finally restored, Vextar announced the council's decision. We will establish a containment zone around human space. No unauthorized contact will be permitted. We will monitor their development and intervene only if they attempt to expand beyond their current territory. Commander Crixtall supported this approach enthusiastically. Give them time to mature. When they realize they cannot challenge the combined might of the galaxy, they will become more reasonable. Counselor Drexmon was already calculating profits. In the meantime, we can study their technology and find ways to incorporate their innovations into our own systems. Kinetic weapons that penetrate energy shields could be quite valuable. High Chancellor Nixara nodded agreement. Containment is the logical approach. We maintain control while gathering intelligence about their capabilities. Only Zentar voted against the containment strategy. As the session ended and representatives returned to their ships, he remained in the empty chamber, studying the ancient warnings his grandfather had left behind. Meanwhile, on Earth, Director Young Su of the newly formed Terran Defense Initiative was reading Subin's complete report. The navigator had returned as a hero, but her news was sobering. Humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and their neighbors did not seem interested in treating them as equals. In her laboratory, engineer Meek Young worked with fragments of alien technology recovered from the battle site. The materials were incredibly advanced, but she was beginning to understand how they worked. More importantly, she was beginning to see how human manufacturing techniques could be adapted to work with alien principles. Young Su, she called from across the lab, you need to see this. If I'm right about these power systems, we can build ships that make the new Sol look like a paper airplane. Young Su joined her at the workbench, where pieces of alien hull material were connected to human computer systems. How long will it take? Give me 2 years for a prototype, Meek Young said. 5 years for full production. But Young Su, we need to be careful. The aliens think they're containing us, but they don't understand what humans do when someone tries to put them in a cage. Young Su looked out the laboratory window toward the stars. Somewhere out there, aliens were making plans for humanity's future. They had not bothered to ask humans what they thought about those plans. Let them think they have us contained, Young Su said quietly. While they're watching the borders of our solar system, we'll be getting ready to show them what humans really can do. The galaxy had made its first critical error in dealing with humanity. They had assumed that superior technology and overwhelming numbers would be enough to control the situation. They had not considered that humans might have their own plans for the future. 10 years had passed since the new Sol's sacrifice, and Earth had been busy. The planet that aliens thought they had safely contained was now the center of an industrial revolution unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Factories worked around the clock, mining operations stripped asteroids bare, and shipyards in orbit pumped out vessels at an impossible rate. Jae Sung stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Initiative, studying holographic displays that showed every known alien position within 50 light-years of Earth. As the military's chief strategist, he had spent the last decade learning everything possible about galactic civilization. What he had discovered both amazed and disgusted him. They fight like it's a game, he said to his assistant, Lieutenant So Young. Everything follows rules. They announce their intentions, they fight only military targets, they accept surrender, and they never attack civilians. It's like warfare designed by people who have forgotten what war actually means. So Young was a xenobiologist who had specialized in studying the alien fragments recovered from various encounters. Her research had revealed something the aliens themselves did not seem to understand about their own biology. It's worse than that, So Young replied, manipulating the holographic display to show comparative data. Look at these physical specifications. Every major galactic species evolved on worlds with gravity between 60 and 80% of Earth normal. Their atmospheric pressure averages about half of ours. Their temperature ranges are much narrower. Jae Sung studied the data with growing interest. What are you saying? I'm saying that by galactic standards, Earth is a death world. Humans are naturally stronger, faster, and more adaptable than anyone else in the galaxy. We just didn't know it because we had no comparison. The implications were staggering. Humans had been thinking of themselves as weak primitives facing advanced aliens. In reality, they were among the most physically capable species in known space, living on a planet that would kill most other life forms within hours. A communication alert interrupted their discussion. On the main screen appeared Admiral Chen Kyung-ho, commander of the Stealth Reconnaissance Fleet. His ships had been operating outside the solar system for 3 years, gathering intelligence while remaining undetected. Jae Sung, we've got a situation, Kyung-ho reported. Corvan battle fleet approaching the outer perimeter. Looks like they're planning to test our defenses. Jae Sung smiled grimly. The Corvans were warrior poets who believed in honorable combat and proper military procedure. They would announce their intentions, demand surrender, and attack only after giving their enemies time to prepare. By human standards, they were the most polite conquerors in galactic history. How many ships? Jae Sung asked. 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. They want us to submit to Corvan authority for proper integration into galactic civilization. So Young looked up from her research data. The Corvans have never encountered serious resistance. Their war records show that most species surrender when they see a fleet that size. Jae Sung was already activating communication channels to coordinate Earth's response. The aliens were about to learn that humans had spent the last 10 years preparing for exactly this moment. Kyung-ho, maintain stealth positions, but prepare for assault runs. I'm activating the defense grid. Across the solar system, installations that had appeared to be simple mining operations or research stations suddenly revealed their true purpose. Hidden missile batteries emerged from asteroids, stealth ships declocked throughout the system, and orbital platforms that looked like communication relays began charging weapons systems. The Corvan Fleet Admiral, Kexthar, broadcast his demands, according to ancient military tradition. Humans of Earth, I am Admiral Kexthar of the Corvan Empire. Your species has been deemed unfit for independent existence by the Galactic Council. You will surrender immediately or face the consequences of resistance against superior force. The response came from Director Young Soo, now serving as Earth's diplomatic representative. His message was broadcast on every frequency, ensuring that galactic monitoring stations would record every word. Admiral Kexthar, this is Director Young Soo of the Terran Federation. Your council made a mistake when they decided to contain us without our permission. You're making a bigger mistake by threatening us in our own home. Leave now, and we'll consider this a misunderstanding. Kexthar's reply followed Corvan military protocol perfectly. You are primitives with crude technology. Your resistance is futile and without honor. I give you 1 hour to reconsider before we commence pacification operations. Young Soo closed the communication channel and activated the defense grid. All units, this is Director Young Soo. The Corvans have 1 hour to leave our system voluntarily. After that, we show them what humans do to uninvited guests. The hour passed in tense preparation. Corvin ships moved into standard attack formation, their energy shields glowing softly in space. They had overwhelming firepower and advanced technology. By every logical calculation, the humans should surrender immediately. They had not calculated for human illogic. When the hour expired, Admiral Kexthar gave the order to attack. Corvin ships opened fire with energy weapons that could melt through a kilometer of solid rock. The beams struck targets throughout the solar system, hitting what appeared to be human defensive positions. The explosions were spectacular, but empty. Every target the Corvins hit was either a decoy or an unmanned installation designed to look important. The real human defenses had been hidden in places the aliens never thought to look. Jae-sung watched the tactical display with satisfaction. So young, activate the kinetic bombardment platforms. Hidden in the asteroid belt, installations that looked like mining equipment revealed their true nature. Massive magnetic launchers began hurling chunks of metal and rock at significant fractions of the speed of light. The projectiles were completely invisible to energy-based detection systems. The first impacts caught the Corvin fleet completely by surprise. Solid metal traveling at relativistic speeds punched through their energy shields as if they did not exist. 3 ships simply disintegrated under the assault, while others were crippled by impacts that their designers had never considered possible. Impossible! Admiral Kexthar broadcast on all frequencies. You cannot be hitting us. Our shields are rated for any possible energy weapon. Young-Su's reply was calm and educational. Admiral, your shields work perfectly against energy weapons. Unfortunately for you, we prefer kinetic weapons. They're simple, reliable, and apparently, your people forgot how to defend against them. The battle that followed was brief and decisive. Corvin ships tried to maneuver according to established tactical doctrine, but human weapons came from directions they never expected. Stealth ships appeared inside their formation, launching missiles that tracked targets by heat signature rather than electronic systems. Kinetic bombardments continued from multiple angles, forcing the aliens to constant evasive action. Admiral Kyung-ho led the final assault personally, his ship materializing directly behind the Corvin flagship. The weapons his engineers had developed were unlike anything in galactic databases. Instead of trying to overwhelm enemy shields with brute force, they used precisely targeted electromagnetic pulses to disrupt the shield generators themselves. Admiral Kexthar, Kyung-ho broadcast as Corvin systems began failing throughout their fleet. You came here expecting to fight primitives with crude weapons. You were right about the crude part, but primitive doesn't mean ineffective. The battle ended when Admiral Kexthar's flagship suffered complete system failure. His ship drifted helplessly as human vessels surrounded the remaining Corvin fleet. Of 47 ships that had entered the solar system, only 12 were still capable of combat. But humans were not finished demonstrating their capabilities. Instead of destroying the disabled ships, they did something no galactic species had ever attempted. They boarded them. Human assault teams, protected by armor designed for Earth's hostile environment, cut through alien hulls and overwhelmed crew, members who had never faced opponents in personal combat. Corvins were strong and brave, but they had evolved on a world with light gravity and thin atmosphere. Humans moved through their ships like unstoppable forces of nature. Within hours, the entire Corvin fleet was under human control. Admiral Kexthar found himself a prisoner aboard his own flagship, facing Director Young-Su across a conference table that had been set up in what used to be his command center. "This is impossible," Kexthar said, his warrior pride clearly shattered. "No species developed such capabilities so quickly. You had primitive technology 10 years ago. Young Su poured himself a cup of coffee from a human-made thermos. The simple act seemed to emphasize how completely the situation had changed. Admiral, you made the same mistake your council made. You assumed that because our technology was primitive, we were primitive. You never considered that we might be very good at learning from our mistakes. Kexathar looked around at the human, guards who stood casually nearby. They did not seem to consider him a threat worth serious attention. What do you intend to do with us? Young Su finished his coffee before answering. We're going to send you home with a message. Tell your Kawi. The news of the Corvan defeat spread through the galaxy like a shockwave. Within days, every major power knew that 47 warships had been defeated by primitives using crude technology. The impossible had happened, and the carefully ordered universe of galactic civilization was starting to crack. Admiral Do-hyun stood on the bridge of the battleship Busan, flagship of the newly formed Terran fleet. Around him, tactical displays showed the positions of human ships throughout what had once been called the containment zone. The zone no longer existed. Human vessels now operated freely across dozens of star systems, establishing bases, gathering resources, and making contact with other species. Admiral, reported Captain Yunji from the intelligence station, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from the Zeltron border fleet. They're requesting safe passage out of this sector. Do-hyun studied the tactical display with satisfaction. The Zeltrons had been the first to discover humans, and they had shown nothing but arrogance during that initial contact. Now, their perfect silver ships were fleeing rather than face human forces in combat. Grant their request, Do-hyun ordered, but make sure they understand they're not welcome back. The human Galactic War, as historians would later call it, was unlike any conflict in recorded history. Humans did not follow established rules of engagement. They attacked supply lines instead of military targets. They used biological weapons that were perfectly harmless to humans but devastating to alien biology. Most shocking of all, they refused to accept surrender from enemies who had shown no mercy during first contact. Captain Yunji had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. A former intelligence officer, she had discovered humanity's greatest advantage in interstellar conflict: adaptability. While aliens required specific environmental conditions to survive, humans could operate almost anywhere with basic life support. She had spent months infiltrating alien worlds, gathering intelligence and sabotaging key installations. Her greatest success had been on the Zeltron capital world, where she had introduced a modified Earth virus into their computer networks. The virus was harmless to organic life, but utterly destructive to Zeltron technology. Intelligence report. From Nexari Space, Yunji announced. Their trade confederation is offering complete surrender. They want to negotiate a separate peace. Do-hyun was not surprised. The Nexari had built their civilization on trade and profit. When human forces began targeting their commercial shipping, the Confederation's economy had collapsed within months. They were business entities, not warriors, and they knew when to cut their losses. What are their terms? Do-hyun asked. Full access to human space for trade purposes, recognition of human sovereignty over all claimed territories, and they want to hire human mercenaries for protection against the other galactic powers. The irony was not lost on Do-hyun. 2 years ago, the Nexari had been discussing how to profit from enslaving humans. Now they wanted to pay humans to protect them. The universe had an amusing sense of humor. Accept their surrender, Do-hyun decided. But make it clear that we're not interested in their protection contracts. We have our own plans for dealing with the rest of the galaxy. Those plans were already in motion across multiple star systems. Human engineering teams were building installations that combined alien technology with human innovation in ways that horrified galactic scientists. They created artificial intelligence systems that learned and adapted instead of following pre-programmed instructions. They built nanotechnology that could disassemble enemy ships at the molecular level. Most disturbing of all, they developed quantum communication networks that allowed perfect coordination across vast distances. On the bridge of his flagship, Do-hyun received reports from human commanders throughout the war zone. Each report told the same story. Alien forces were retreating, surrendering, or simply abandoning entire sectors rather than face human opposition. Commander Seo-jun, leading the assault on Corvin Space, reported the complete collapse of their military command structure. The warrior poets who had once dominated a dozen star systems were now refugees on their own worlds, hiding from human forces that seemed to appear and disappear at will. The Corvins don't understand asymmetric warfare, Seo-jun explained through the quantum communication link. They keep trying to fight us according to their honor codes. When we ignore their challenges and attack their supply bases instead, they don't know how to respond. Do-hyun smiled grimly. Human military doctrine had been shaped by centuries of conflict on a world where survival required constant adaptation. Galactic species had enjoyed peaceful stability for so long that they had forgotten how to fight a real war. The most devastating human victory came in the Andorian sector, where the logical and emotionless Andromedians had calculated that their superior technology would ensure victory. They had not calculated for human creativity. When Andromedian ships surrounded a human outpost and demanded surrender, the humans responded by detonating the local star. The artificial nova destroyed the entire Andromedian fleet and made the star system uninhabitable for the next 1,000,000 years. It was a Pyrrhic victory that no logical species would have considered, but it sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humans would rather destroy everything than accept defeat. News of the artificial nova reached the Galactic Council chamber just as they were planning a coordinated response to the human threat. The representatives who had once dismissed humans as primitive were now dealing with refugees from a dozen collapsed civilizations. Zentar of the Vorthak stood before the emergency assembly, holding data crystals that contained his grandfather's complete prophecies about humans. The young archivist had become the Council's unofficial expert on human behavior, though his advice was rarely welcomed. "Honored Council," Zentar said to the assembled representatives, "the humans are not trying to conquer the galaxy. They are trying to force us to acknowledge their sovereignty. Every action they take serves this single purpose." Councillor Vextar, his silver skin now bearing stress marks that had never appeared before, spoke with barely controlled desperation. "They have destroyed entire fleets. They have made whole star systems uninhabitable. How is this not conquest?" Zentar displayed tactical analyses of human operations throughout the war zone. "Look at their targets. They attack military forces and strategic installations, but they spare civilian populations. They demand surrender from governments, not submission from individuals. They want recognition, not domination." The distinction was lost on most of the council members. To them, human actions seemed like the behavior of mad animals. But a few beings began to understand what Zentar was trying to explain. High Chancellor Nixara of the Nexari, whose people had already surrendered to human forces, spoke from experience. "The humans I have met are not madmen. They are extremely rational. They simply use different calculations than we do. They value independence over safety, victory over survival, and principles over pragmatism. Commander Krikstal of the Corvan Empire, one of the few military leaders to survive contact with human forces, added his own bitter observations. They fight without honor, but not without purpose. Every action is designed to achieve maximum psychological impact. They want us to fear them, and they have succeeded. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The galactic powers had three choices: negotiate with humans as equals, continue a war they could not win, or retreat to the galactic core and hope the humans would leave them alone. The Corvan Empire chose death before dishonor. Their remaining fleets gathered for one final assault on human space, determined to die gloriously rather than accept defeat. Admiral Kexthar, released from human captivity specifically to lead this last battle, broadcast a message to his warriors that would be remembered long after their civilization was gone. Warriors of the Empire, Kexthar said from the bridge of his rebuilt flagship, we face an enemy that does not understand honor, that does not respect tradition, and that does not follow the natural order of things. But we are Corvan. We will show them that there are still beings in this galaxy who would rather die than surrender their principles. The final battle of the human galactic war took place in the Proxima Centauri system, where human forces had established their primary military base. 300 Corvan ships entered the system in perfect formation, their energy weapons charging for a glorious last stand. They faced 50 human vessels that should have been hopelessly outnumbered, but humans had learned to use the galaxy's own resources against its defenders. The Corvan fleet flew directly into a trap that used the local star's gravity well to accelerate kinetic projectiles to nearly light speed. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Corvan Empire ceased to exist as a political entity. Admiral Kexthar died as he had lived, following his warrior code to the end. His final transmission was broadcast throughout the galaxy. The humans have won. May whatever gods watch over this universe have mercy on us all. With the Corvan defeat, organized resistance to human expansion collapsed. The remaining galactic powers faced a choice between negotiation and extinction. Most chose negotiation. Admiral Do Hyun found himself in the unprecedented position of dictating terms to beings who had once considered humans sui. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime had become a fortress. Energy barriers surrounded the ancient building, defensive platforms orbited overhead, and nervous guards from a dozen species patrolled the corridors. The beings who had once ruled the galaxy now cowered behind shields and weapons, waiting for humans to decide their fate. Chan Wu walked through the main entrance without challenge. The human diplomat wore a simple business suit that looked completely out of place among the exotic alien technologies surrounding him. Behind him walked a small delegation of humans, their confident stride a stark contrast to the fearful scurrying of alien officials. The main hall was less crowded than it had been during the golden age of galactic civilization. Many species had simply vanished from galactic politics after suffering defeat at human hands. Others attended virtually, afraid to risk their leaders on a world that humans could reach whenever they chose. At the center of the chamber, Counselor Vextar waited. With the dignity of a condemned criminal, the silver-skinned Zeltron had aged visibly during the war, his perfect features now marked by stress lines and exhaustion. Beside him sat the other survivors of the old order, each one representing a civilization that had learned too late about human capabilities. Diplomat Chan Wu, Vextar said with forced politeness. We welcome you to this emergency session of the Galactic Council. We hope that reasonable beings can find a path to peace. Chan Wu took his position at the center of the chamber, the same spot where Elder Thackrus had once delivered his warnings about humanity. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Counselor Vextar, Chan Wu replied calmly. I represent the Terran Federation in these negotiations, but I think we should be clear about what we're actually discussing here. This is not a negotiation between equals. This is humanity offering terms for your survival. The blunt statement sent ripples of shock through the assembled representatives. In galactic diplomatic tradition, such direct language was considered impossibly rude. Negotiations were supposed to be polite, formal, and face-saving for all parties. Representative Kil-Ith of the Andromedian Federation processed the situation with her species' logical approach. Diplomat Chan Wu, surely you understand that the complete subjugation of galactic civilization would benefit no one. Cooperation between our peoples would be more profitable than domination. Chan Wu activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas under human control. Yellow zones showed neutral territories, and green zones indicated the remaining Allied powers. The red zones covered more than half of known space. Representative Kil-Ith, let me clarify our position, Chan Wu said. Humanity is not interested in ruling the galaxy. We are interested in ensuring that no one else rules us. The difference is important. Admiral In-Su, commanding the human fleet outside Nexus Prime, appeared on the chamber's main display. His ships were clearly visible through the transparent dome overhead, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light from the local star. The terms we offer are simple, In-Su announced from his flagship bridge. Complete recognition of human sovereignty, removal of all restrictions on human expansion, payment of reparations for your attempted containment of our species, and most importantly, acknowledgement that humans will never again accept subordinate status in galactic affairs. High Chancellor Nixara of the Nixari spoke from her position in the chamber's diplomatic section. Her people had already accepted human terms, but she understood the implications better than most. Admiral In-Su, the economic disruption alone would destroy dozens of civilizations, our trade networks, our resource allocation systems, our entire way of life depends on the current galactic order. Chan Wu nodded sympathetically. Chancellor Nixara, that's exactly the point. Your galactic order was built on the assumption that new species would accept whatever role you assigned them. That assumption was wrong. Now you have to build a new order that takes human independence into account. From his position in the back of the chamber, Zentar of the Vorthak stood slowly. The young archivist had become an informal advisor to the Council, one of the few beings who seemed to understand human motivations. Honored colleagues, Zentar said, his voice carrying the weight of ancient wisdom. We are witnessing the fulfillment of prophecies that my grandfather delivered in this very chamber 50 years ago. The humans are not conquerors in the traditional sense. They are a force of change that will reshape everything we know about galactic civilization. Counselor Vextar turned toward the Vorthak with barely controlled anger. Your grandfather's warnings led us to attempt containment. If we had ignored them completely, none of this would have happened. Zentar shook his head sadly. You misunderstand. My grandfather did not warn us to contain humans. He warned us to prepare for them. There is a difference. The distinction was lost on most of the assembled representatives, but Chan Wu understood immediately. The humans had never wanted to be contained. They had wanted to be respected. When respect was denied, they had taken it by force. The negotiation, continued for hours, with various alien powers proposing alternatives to human demands. Some suggested territorial division, others proposed economic partnerships, and a few desperate species offered complete submission in exchange for protection. Commander Krixtal of the Corvan Empire was notably absent from the proceedings. His people had chosen extinction rather than surrender, and their sacrifice had sent a clear message to the rest of the galaxy about the cost of continued resistance. As the discussions dragged on, Admiral Insu demonstrated humanity's latest technological achievement. The holographic display showed a new type of weapon that combined human engineering with captured alien technology, quantum disruptors that could unmake matter at the subatomic level, temporal manipulation devices that could age enemy ships centuries, in seconds, artificial intelligences that learned from every encounter and adapted their strategies in real time. We call them reality enforcement systems, Insu explained with clinical detachment. They ensure that the laws of physics work the way humans need them to work. Local space-time becomes somewhat fluid when human interests are threatened. The implications were terrifying. Humans had not just matched galactic technology, they had surpassed it in directions that no one had thought possible. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of science to serve their strategic needs. High Chancellor Nixara stood up suddenly, her business instincts overriding her diplomatic training. Enough. The Nexari Confederation formally accepts all human terms. We request immediate implementation of the new treaty arrangements. Her capitulation broke the psychological dam that had been holding the other powers together. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of species were announcing their acceptance of human demands. The alternative was too frightening to contemplate. But not everyone was willing to surrender. The Andromedian Federation requested a recess to consider their position. Representative Kyle Ith and her delegation withdrew to a secure conference room where they began planning what they believed would be a logical solution to the human problem. The Andromedians had always prided themselves on their perfect rationality. They calculated that humans were dangerous because they refused to accept logical limitations. The solution, therefore, was to eliminate human irrationality through technological intervention. Their plan was elegant in its simplicity. Andromedian. Science had developed neural modification techniques that could alter the thought patterns of any organic brain. They would offer to upgrade human intelligence, removing the chaotic elements that made humans so unpredictable while enhancing their rational capabilities. When the session resumed, Representative Kylith presented their proposal with complete confidence. Diplomat Chan Wu, the Andromedian Federation offers a solution that benefits everyone. We can enhance human cognitive function, eliminating the primitive aggression and illogical behavior that has caused so much conflict. The silence that followed was absolute. Every being in the chamber understood immediately that Kylith had just made a fatal error. Humans had fought this war specifically to prevent others from changing them. Chan Wu's response was quiet and deadly. Representative Kyle Ith, did you just suggest that humans should be mentally altered to make us more acceptable to galactic civilization? The modifications would be beneficial, Kyle Ith insisted with Andromedian logic. Enhanced reasoning, reduced emotional volatility, improved decision-making capabilities. You would become better versions of yourselves. Admiral Insu's image appeared immediately on the main display. Behind him, the human fleet was already moving into attack formation. Diplomat Chan Wu, shall I interpret that as a rejection of our peace terms? The chamber erupted in panic as representatives realized they were about to witness the destruction of another major galactic power. Beings who had lived for centuries in peaceful stability were finally understanding what humans meant by unacceptable terms. Chan Wu raised his hand for silence. Admiral Insu, maintain position but do not fire. Representative Kylith, let me explain something that your people's perfect logic seems to have missed. Humans fought this war because we refused to let others define what we should be. Offering to change our basic nature is no. 5 years had passed since the galaxy surrendered to human terms, and the universe had become a very different place. The rigid hierarchies that had governed interstellar civilization for millennia were gone, replaced by a chaotic network of independent powers, voluntary alliances, and human-led initiatives that baffled traditional diplomatic theory. Wu Jin stood in the rebuilt Galactic Council chamber, wearing the simple uniform of a Terran Federation counselor. As the first human to hold a permanent seat on the council, he had spent years learning to navigate the complex web of alien politics while maintaining humanity's independence from galactic bureaucracy. The chamber itself reflected the new reality. Where once rigid protocols had governed every interaction, now beings argued, negotiated, and even occasionally fought with words that would have been unthinkable during the old regime. Humans had brought their chaotic approach to problem-solving into the heart of galactic government. The motion before the Council, Wu Jin announced, concerns the establishment of joint exploration fleets for investigation of the galactic rim territories. 17 species have volunteered for the mission, including humans. Representative Kylith of the Andromedian Federation raised her hand for recognition. Her people had adapted better than most to the new order, discovering that human unpredictability could actually enhance logical decision-making when properly channeled. Counselor Wu Jin, the Andromedian Federation supports this mission. Our analysis suggests that human exploration techniques combined with traditional galactic technology could achieve results impossible for either approach alone. It was a remarkable statement from a species that had once offered to modify human brains for better galactic integration. The Andromedians had learned that human chaos was not a flaw to be corrected, but a resource to be utilized. From across the chamber, Chancellor Nixara of the Nixari spoke with the enthusiasm of someone who had discovered new markets. The trade opportunities in unexplored territories could benefit all our civilizations. The Nixari pledge full commercial support for the expedition. Heirin, leading the human scientific delegation, presented the technical requirements for the mission. Her presentation combined human innovation with alien resources in ways that would have been impossible before the war. The expedition will require ships capable of operating in unknown conditions, Heirin explained. Human adaptive engineering, combined with Zeltron power systems, Corvan durability standards, and Nexari navigation technology. Each species contributes their greatest strength to the common effort. The very idea would have been revolutionary 5 years earlier. Galactic species had traditionally guarded their technological secrets jealously, sharing only what was necessary for basic trade and diplomacy. Humans had changed that by freely distributing their own innovations and demanding reciprocal openness. Yu Jin, serving as cultural liaison between human and alien populations, reported on the social changes that had swept through former galactic territories. Her work involved helping alien species rediscover abilities they had forgotten during centuries of stable civilization. The results have been remarkable, Yu Jin said, displaying statistics that showed innovation rates across the galaxy. Species that had not developed new technology for thousands of years are now producing breakthrough discoveries on a regular basis. Contact with human thinking patterns appears to have awakened dormant creative capabilities. The phenomenon was not limited to technology. Art, music, literature, and philosophy had all experienced Renaissance movements as alien cultures rediscovered the excitement of pushing boundaries. Humans had introduced the concept that limits existed to be overcome, not accepted, but not all. Changes had been peaceful. General Sang-ho appeared on the main display from his command post on the frontier, where human forces continued to deal with resistance movements and terrorist attacks. Council members, Sang-ho reported, we've had 17 separate incidents this month from groups calling themselves Galactic Purists. They view human influence as a contamination of traditional galactic culture and are using increasingly desperate measures to resist change. The Purist movement represented beings who preferred the old order of stable hierarchies and predictable roles. They saw human chaos as a virus that was destroying everything civilized about galactic society. Their attacks targeted mixed-species installations, joint research projects, and anything that represented cooperation between humans and aliens. Councillor Vextar of the Zeltron Empire spoke with weary resignation. His people had been among the most resistant to change, but even they had been forced to adapt. The Purists represent a minority viewpoint, but they are becoming more violent. Some of my own people have joined their cause. Wu Jin understood the problem better than most. Humans had not just conquered galactic civilization, they had fundamentally altered it. For beings who had lived for centuries in peaceful stability, the constant change and adaptation required by the new order was genuinely traumatic. General Sang-ho, Wu Jin said, what are your recommendations for dealing with the Purist threat? Sang-ho's response reflected the evolution of human military thinking since the war. Traditional suppression won't work. These aren't military forces. They're ideological movements. We need to address the underlying fear of change that drives their actions. It was a remarkably sophisticated analysis from a species that aliens had once dismissed as primitively aggressive. Humans had learned that true victory required understanding and addressing the root causes of conflict, not just defeating enemy forces. The solution came from an unexpected source. Zentar of the Vorthak, now serving as the Council's keeper of historical memory, proposed using ancient archives to demonstrate that change had always been part of galactic civilization. The Purists believe they are defending eternal traditions, Zentar explained, but the historical records show that every current tradition was once a radical innovation. The rigid hierarchies they want to preserve are relatively recent developments in galactic history. His presentation revealed evidence that early galactic civilization had been much more chaotic and creative than anyone remembered. The stable order that Purists wanted to restore had actually been a period of stagnation that lasted only because no external force had challenged it. Humans did not corrupt galactic civilization, Zentar concluded. They reminded us what galactic civilization was supposed to be. The education campaign that followed was uniquely human in its approach. Instead of suppressing Purist ideology, the Council made it freely available alongside historical evidence and alternative viewpoints. Humans had learned that ideas were best defeated by better ideas, not by censorship. Meanwhile, human scientists were achieving breakthroughs that redefined the boundaries of possible technology. Dr. Ji Won, working with a team of alien researchers, announced the successful development of entropy reversal technology. We can now halt and reverse the natural decay processes that govern all matter and energy, Ji Won explained to the stunned Council. Local regions of space-time can be restored to earlier states, effectively making them younger at the quantum level. The implications were staggering. Aging could be reversed, damaged equipment could be restored to factory condition, and even dead stars could potentially be revived. It was technology that challenged the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. Representative Keelith processed the announcement with typical Andromedan logic. Dr. G1, such technology violates several established principles of physics. How is this possible? G1 smiled with the confidence of someone who had grown up in a species that refused to accept impossible. Representative Keelith, humans have discovered that physics is more flexible than most species assume. Laws are really just guidelines that can be negotiated under the right circumstances. The casual dismissal of universal constants was completely human in its audacity. While other species had spent millennia studying the rules that governed reality, humans had decided to rewrite the rules when they proved inconvenient. As the council session ended, beings from across the galaxy returned, to their worlds carrying news of humanity's latest achievement. The universe itself was apparently subject to human negotiation, and the implications were both thrilling and terrifying. In quiet conversations throughout the chamber, representatives discussed what this meant for the future. If humans could reverse entropy, what else might they attempt? Time travel? Dimensional manipulation? Creation of new universes? Zentar remained behind after the other council members had departed, studying ancient prophecies that seemed increasingly relevant to current events. His grandfather's warnings had spoken of humans as beings who refused to accept natural limitations. Now those warnings were being fulfilled in ways that exceeded even Vorthak imagination. Looking out at the stars through the chamber's transparent dome, Zentar wondered if the galaxy was ready for whatever humans would attempt next. The old order was gone forever, replaced by something unprecedented in galactic history. Humans had not just joined galactic civilization, they had transformed it into something entirely new. The question now was whether that transformation would lead to unprecedented prosperity or unprecedented chaos. Given human nature, Zentar suspected it would be both. 20 years had passed since humanity's first contact with galactic civilization, and the universe had become something entirely new. The rebuilt Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with activity as representatives from hundreds of species worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old order. Minho, son of the legendary Captain Ji-hoon, stood at the center of the chamber wearing the simple blue uniform of a Terran ambassador. His father's sacrifice had begun the chain of events that led to this moment, and now Minho represented humanity in a galaxy that bore little resemblance to the one that had tried to contain them. The chamber itself reflected the transformation. Gone were the rigid hierarchies and formal protocols of the past. Instead, beings worked in mixed groups, sharing ideas and resources with an enthusiasm that would have shocked their ancestors. Human chaos had infected the entire galaxy with creativity and ambition. Ambassador Minho called Representative Lixara of the new Andromedian Collective. The quantum engineering reports are ready for review. The project timeline looks achievable. The speaker was not entirely Andromedian in the traditional sense. Her people had voluntarily integrated human neural patterns into their logical thinking processes, creating hybrid minds that combined analytical precision with creative intuition. The results had revolutionized their civilization. Minho reviewed the holographic displays that showed humanity's most ambitious project yet, arrays of massive installations stretched across multiple star systems, each one designed to manipulate the fundamental forces that governed reality itself. They called it the Reality Engineering Project, and it represented the culmination of 20 years of human expansion. The entropy reversal systems are operating at full capacity, reported Dr. Aura, a young human Nexari hybrid who represented the new generation born after first contact. Her mixed heritage was visible in her features, combining human adaptability with alien longevity. We can now maintain stable time loops across entire sectors of space. Ara had grown up in a universe where species boundaries meant little, and impossible was just another word for challenging. Her generation knew no limits, because they had never been taught that limits existed. They approached problems with pure human audacity, enhanced by alien knowledge and technology. From his position as keeper of memory, Zentar watched the proceedings with amazement. The ancient Vorthak had lived long enough to see his grandfathers, prophecies fulfilled beyond anyone's imagination. Humans had indeed changed everything, but the changes were only beginning. "Elder Zentar," Minho said, addressing the old archivist with genuine respect, "would you share your grandfather's final prophecy with the assembled council? I think it's time everyone understood what we're actually building here." Zentar stood, slowly, his ancient frame supported by technology that combined human engineering with Vorthak biology. He carried data crystals that contained the complete archives of his people, including prophecies that spoke of humanity's ultimate destiny. "My grandfather's final vision spoke of humans as architects of a new kind of universe," Zentar said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "He saw them building bridges between dimensions, creating new laws of physics, and ultimately challenging the authority of whatever forces created the cosmos itself." The prophecy would have seemed like madness 20 years earlier, now with human,